Yo, I'm Alex. Welcome to my crib. Dog crib. Hi, I'm Alex from Average Woodworking. Today we're going to build this giant doghouse. So the base of this doghouse is the floor that my dogs will actually... No, wait. Where's my pencil? Okay, good. There it is. The base of this doghouse is actually where my dogs will sit. So it needs to be super sturdy because my dogs are giant monsters. And now I'm using a handy little trick here. Since I need two rails of the same length, I cut one and I use the first one as a measurement to cut the second one. Looks good. Now since this is going to be in direct contact with the ground, I'm using pressure treated pine for this part. But if you're building a doghouse at home, you want to limit your use of the pressure treated pine because if they chew on it, it can actually be fatal for them. And like I said before, the base needs to be nice and sturdy, so I'm using pocket holes to connect everything in the middle. I'm also going to use Titebond 3 on every interior joint just because it's waterproof and it will be outside. Now, the thing about pocket holes is you're supposed to clamp them before you attach the screws. This was a little bit of a problem because I don't have clamps that big, so I tried a couple of different methods and nothing really seemed to work for me. I eventually tried putting a clamp on the outside here, but as you can watch... Oh, well good, we're square. As you can watch, if you watch really close, the board did not stay put. So I had to pull that screw out and try again. I ended up pulling out my 90-degree clamp here, which is a great resource to use except for because of the way the clamp works, you can only put in one pocket screw at a time. So it just made the process a little bit longer, but it made it secure. And go ahead and remember to get all that extra glue off of there before it dries so that it doesn't make a big mess later. And I absolutely could not figure out how to get this to work on my workbench, so I moved it to the floor. But beyond that, it was basically the same procedure each time for all of these corners. We used glue, and then we made sure it was square, and then we used the clamp, and we put the screws in, and it was nice and easy. For the other end, I put glue on both sides, and again, same procedure. Clamp, square, glue, drill. Clamp, square, drill. Before I could add the center support pieces of the frame, I had to get my dividing piece of plywood to be perfectly square and cut to the right length. I'm using my Craig jig again to get these corners nice and straight. Makes it really, really easy to get super straight cuts without a table saw. Move back up to the bench to get these all attached. But before I can really do anything, I had to dry fit the central dividing cross pieces. Yeah! To make sure that this whole idea was going to work. And before I moved on, I put a little mark on the outside. Now this base is split up into two sides, so there's going to be two dog sides. And I want a central support rail in between each one of them. So this is roughly halfway in between, a little less than half. And just like before, it's glue, clamp, drill, square. You get the idea. Oh, and wipe your excess. It's going to be a pain to get it off later if you don't. And once that was done, I repeated the entire thing on the other side. The center beams were a little bit trickier because of the piece going in between them, but at least this first piece, once I had it in the right place, we went on exactly the same way as before. To make sure that all of this was going to work at all, before I attached the second rail, I dry fit the piece of plywood just to make sure this was going to work, at all. A little bit of hammering to get it all in place, get it nice and snug. Went ahead and actually put a clamp on both sides to get it as tight as possible. So especially while I was drilling it in, it all stayed in a nice compact area. This ended up working out really well. Maybe we don't try drilling upside down, kids. I'm a trained professional. Yeah, that sucker's not going anywhere. But, just in case, I put 3 screws through both sides. As an added precaution, I added a line of glue along where the center piece of plywood connects down to the pressure-treated pine, and I worked it in just to make sure it was going to stick. This was a good step later on, I found out, as it helped make the bottom of the plywood more waterproof since it was in contact with the ground too. And to get the actual flooring deck of both dogs' sides, I took my full sheet of plywood and... oh wait, my pencil again. Oh, good, there it is. I took the full sheet of plywood and cut it down to size using that Craig jig that I used before. Man, I love this thing. Herring protection. Herring protection is good. That got the width to the right width, and now I just moved it around to get them cut down in half. It's always a good idea to go back and double check measurements on the actual piece you're attaching this board to. I may have made one small modification to my T-square. Have to use a T-square in this instance because my Craig jig won't reach this far. And if you saw my last video, I had quite a bit of difficulty using this T-square. I have figured out that process, and cutting that little piece off did actually help. Basically, just clamp the T-square where it needs to go at the right measurement and keep your saw pushed up against it. Now we put it on the actual frame, you can see we have a nice tight fit, and it's perfectly sustainable for any large doggos. And I just repeated this process again. Now, since it's a smaller cut, I was able to use my Craig jig. Woohoo! Look at that fit. Whew, perfect. It was about here that I decided that this didn't quite have enough support for what I was hoping for. So off camera, I went ahead and added 2 cross support pieces to both sides just to sort of even out the pressure so that that piece of plywood wasn't so bent. Before actually attaching this to the frame, gotta sand everything, especially the cut edges. Clamp number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then it was just attaching to the frame. I just used finishing nails here because of their small nail head. Just doesn't protrude as much. And here we have it. The frame is done. The flooring deck is attached. The divider is not going anywhere. And this bad boy's all ready for the walls to go on in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give me a like down below. And for more content like this in the future, hit that red subscribe button and ring the bell. I put out new videos every Sunday, including part 2 and 3 of this video series. For loads more content and free woodworking plans, including the plans for this project, hop on over to my website, averagewoodworking.com. Also, don't forget to follow me on other social media like Twitter and Instagram. You can find those links down below. Molly! Thanks so much for watching. Molly loves her new house, and I'm sure your dogs would too. See you next week.